Arbus. I am the campus rep for Grapevine High School for SAGE, and I have asked several college students to be here tonight to talk to our high school students and families about what college life is like and to share some of their experiences. So I so appreciate them taking time out of their day. I know we have some of them that have just recently graduated and I'm sure would rather be doing other things at this point. And we have a couple that are still in the process of finishing up their semesters. So especially for you guys to take time out to be here, I so appreciate that. It looks like we have everybody on mute. If you could just make sure, double check and make sure you're on mute just so that we can keep the background noise to a minimum. We did, for those of you that when you registered for this event, you did have an opportunity to submit questions. So I have compiled those questions and we will be starting with those to ask our panelists. And then if we have time at the end, I will take questions via the chat feature. So we'll just have to see how our timing goes on that. We did get quite a few pre-submitted questions that we will be starting with. So again, thank you guys all for taking time to be here. I know it's the end of the year and a busy time, but this was the time that worked best for our panelists as well. So thank you to everyone. And before we get started, I would like to invite our SAGE president, Kimberly Phoenix, to say a few words and talk to us about SAGE. Kimberly?
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. Good evening, everyone. I've been looking forward to this evening and an opportunity to welcome you all to tonight's program and also to say just a few short words about SAGE. So obviously, first, I want to thank Kim for her work in planning tonight's event, and also a huge shout out of appreciation to all of the panelists. As Kim mentioned, it's a crazy time of year for everybody, but especially for the college kids. So we really appreciate you taking the time to do this. And for any of you who this is not your first event this year with SAGE, you're probably thinking it's May. Surely she's not going to talk to us about membership. But I'm already thinking about next August. So I have to do my quick plug that if you are not a member of GC SAGE, please take a look at our website and consider joining for next year. If you go out to gc-sage.org, it's a super easy process to either renew your membership for next year or to get signed up. And if you sign up now, we will run that all the way through next June. So you don't have to worry about, you can kind of beat the crowd to get out there and get your membership renewed. So that's my only plug for today, because this is our last event for this school year for us, for SAGE. So we look forward to seeing you all hopefully this summer at one of our social events or next August. So thanks so much and enjoy the program.
Excellent. Thank you, Kimberly. And just one last note before we get started, this event is being recorded. So we will be getting that up on the SAGE website in a day or two for those that weren't able to be here tonight, or if you want to review it. I know there were a couple conflicts for some of the students that were unable to be here. So we've got some parents kind of filling in and taking notes for the kids. But if you want to show them the recording later, that will be available on the website. So with that, we will go ahead and get started, and I will invite the panelists to introduce themselves. So if you guys, when I call on you, can just share your name, the school you either just graduated from or are currently attending, and what your major is. And we will start, Emily, with you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Emily Stoller. I just graduated from Baylor University, and I got a degree in mechanical engineering.
Excellent. Thank you. Jasmine?
Hi, everyone. My name's Jasmine. I'm currently a junior at Stanford University in California, and I'm majoring in an interdisciplinary major called Management Science and Engineering that combines aspects of economics, business, public policy, and data science. And I'm also a computer science minor.
That's great, Jasmine. And Jasmine is actually still in California and still taking classes. So we especially appreciate you making here this evening, Jasmine. Thank you. Sam, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Gardner. I just graduated from Clemson University a couple weeks ago, and I majored in biomedical engineering.
Thank you. Justin?
Hi everyone, my name is Justin Farbes. I just graduated from Texas A&M and I majored in industrial engineering with a minors in economics.
Okay, thank you. Luca, how about you?
Hi, I'm Luka Valencic. Right now I'm a junior at Caltech and I major in computer science.
Great. And Luca as well is still in the middle of classes. So thank you, Luca, for taking time to be here. So we will go ahead then and just dive into the questions. As I mentioned, I did get quite a few that were pre-submitted, and I have organized that, kind of combined the ones that were similar. And I have put them sort of in chronological order. So we will start with high school preparation as a topic. And the first question is, what high school classes best prepared you for college? Who would like to take that one? Luca.
At least for me, the most important classes are like high-level math classes like calculus, multivariable, and whatnot, just because more or less all of the classes just assume you know that right when you get into school. And then like, if you don't know it, you're already starting behind everyone.
Okay, that's good. Justin, I saw you nodding your head. Do you have anything to add to that?
I just think the math is, at least in any engineering field, that's going to be the biggest thing. But
And I know we do have some families on here that actually have younger students, so middle school students that aren't quite in high school yet. And the thing about those math classes is you really have to kind of set yourself up from almost the middle school age to be on the right path to get to those high level math classes. So did you guys do that? Did you start out early in middle school kind of planning for that, Luca?
I wasn't really planning for it, but I ended up skipping like 7th grade math. And then I also just did the Algebra 2 pre-cal class combined. So I ended up getting like calculus AB in like sophomore year.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So you were way up there. And Emily, I think you took higher level math as well. Did you plan for that early?
Yeah, I also did the combined math class and then did Calc 1 and 2 in high school. So that really helped prepare for college. So I could just go right into Cal 3, which that really helped me get ahead in the engineering classes as well. So I'd recommend math, especially in the engineering fields, is a big thing to get ahead in.
Excellent. Okay. We've pretty much got a consensus on that question there. Okay, the next question with regard to high school prep was, in your opinion, how much do you think class rank and GPA helped you when you were applying to college? Was that a big factor, or do you guys feel like it was more SAT scores and other things? Who wants to take that one? Sam.
For me, Clemson's a state school, so GPA and class rank really didn't matter for me. What mattered for me most was ACT scores in terms of scholarship money. So I know for Texas, if you're planning on going in-state, it's a little different, but for out-of-state, at least at the school that I applied to, it wasn't a big issue for me. So if you're not super high in your class, you'll still get into college. So don't stress about that. But yeah, just make sure you do well on ACT and SAT, and then I'll get you some scholarship money.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Justin, I know for you, you had automatic admit for A&M based on your ranking. So I guess in your case, it wasn't, right?
yeah, I think that's true for all the Texas public schools, but I don't know what those ranks are, like what the cutoffs are.
Yeah, I know they have been changing for sure. Just to follow up for you, Sam, on your ACT scores, how many of you, given the importance of those scores, and I know that has changed a little bit as well with COVID and test optional in some areas, but did you guys do a lot of prep for those tests, or not necessarily?
I did a lot of prep.
You did.
No, I didn't do a lot of prep. No, I did
not. Okay.
Yeah, I think it depends on like the school that you want to get into. So what I think is a great strategy is looking at the middle 50% of admits that get into the school. Usually those statistics are posted, if not for the most recent year, maybe for a couple years back, and then try and get your score within that range. So I knew that I wanted to go to Stanford. So I looked, okay, what are most students that get it into Stanford getting on the test? And then that's what I was shooting for when I was prepping. So obviously these numbers will be different for every school, but I just prepped on my own. I like bought an ACT prep book and I did a bunch of practice tests like every weekend leading up to the test. So it's totally possible to study on your own, like without a tutor or anything. So I used like Khan Academy is awesome for the SAT, and just like using those books is great. There's like so many awesome free resources online. So yeah, I think it just depends the kind of school that you want to get into and what the scores look like for that school. And you may be able to get that score without doing much studying, and then you may have to work a little bit harder in studying to get your desired score. So I think it depends on the school you're going to, but those are the strategies that I used that I found successful.
Okay, great. And I know, Sam, you said you didn't do a whole lot of prep. Justin, I think you were shaking your head. Anyone else want to weigh in on that?
I mean, I just took it. I think Clemson is not at the caliber that Stanford is. So I think if you're applying to a Stanford, that your situation might be a little bit different. But I didn't need to like get a super high score to get in. So I didn't really study for it.
I know one of the things that the high school kids are kind of weighing right now, especially the ones that are upperclassmen, are, you know, where is their time best spent, right? As they're thinking about, is it essay writing? Is it community service? Is it test prep? You know, really, I think that's the kind of thing that a lot of them are trying to figure out, you know, where is their time best spent? So some of these questions I think are kind of geared toward that.
I mean, I think that at least like for the elite schools, like they don't really care what your score is, as long as it's not like, oh, this person bombed the test. So they're probably gonna bomb all of our classes. So there's no point in admitting them.
College kids that are talking about college.
Okay, please, if you're just joining us, please make sure you've got yourself on mute so that we can keep our background noise to a minimum. Thank you very much. And let's see, so next question on high school prep, and I think this one, Sam, is going to go to you. And it asks, what are the first steps required to prepare yourself to be a pre-med student in college?
Yeah, so I mean, first off, knowing what prereqs you're going to do. So you have your biology, chemistry, physics, biochem, basically all your major science courses. So if you do end up being a science major and wanting to go pre-med, it's usually pretty easy to get those prereqs. I majored in engineering, so it was a little different. I had to kind of plan before I got into school when I was going to fit these prereqs in. But as far as high school, if you reach out to your primary care physician, maybe seeing if you could shadow them just to get some experience on what it's like to be in the practice, reaching out to family, friends. That's kind of how I started with my shadowing. And then as you get into college, you can do some more jobs with working as a medical assistant or scribing for a practice. And so that gets you that clinical experience that you will need when you apply.
So with shadowing, Sam, you're really talking about just getting somebody that you know to allow you to kind of follow them around for a little while and see what
Exactly. So I shadowed my orthopedic surgeon, family friend. I've gone to see him when I broke my arm. And so he was more than willing. Most physicians are more than willing to have you come shadow. I know with COVID, it's going to be a little different. So may have to wait a little bit longer for COVID to kind of go away, for lack of a better way to say that. But yeah, so just making sure that you have are getting that clinical experience before you apply, because you need it to apply for sure.
Okay, so you definitely think they need that in high school, or can they wait till college to get some?
No, you don't need it in high school. They really don't look at your high school experience. Now, if say you really want to get ahead, go for it. I shadowed in high school, not a lot, just to kind of see what I was getting into, really see if I wanted to rearrange my class schedule in order to fit these extra classes in. That's more what it was for me. But when you apply, you're not going to be putting your high school shadowing. Now you could have some really good patient experience that you want to use on your personal statement. That could happen in high school. And so that's really where you would include it. But other than that, it's really more would be just for you to see if you really do want to put in the time to become a physician or not. So you don't need it in high school, but definitely in college.
Got it. Okay, thank you so much. The next topic that we have is choosing a school. So this is really talking about how do you narrow down the options and figure out which schools you even want to apply to. I know for a lot of our GT kids in high school, you know, they're just inundated with flyers and mailers and all kinds of stuff. And, you know, I know my daughter has a giant, huge bag that she just piles all of those things into, and it's overwhelming. So, you know, what did you guys do to kind of take that gigantic pile of stuff and narrow it down to which schools you really want to apply to? Who wants to start? Emily, how about you?
Okay, yeah, I totally understand that. I had lots of piles of brochures and stuff that I got mailed, and I honestly had no idea where I wanted to go to college when I first started the process. So I wasn't like always knew where I wanted to go. So I just basically did a lot of Googling and research on all of the different schools across the nation that had the programs that I was looking into. And then I started just compiling lists of like kind of more like safe schools that I like knew I could get into, and more like target schools that would be kind of what I thought were things I like could definitely get into, but it were a little bit of a stretch. And then more like reach schools where it might be a little harder for me to get into. And then one thing that I think was most beneficial was going on tours of schools. That's where you really get the feel for like where you feel like you would be a good fit for you, and where you like the culture of the campus and things like that. So the biggest thing for me to narrow down was just figuring out your priorities of like, do you think the location is the most important to you, or the programs? And then the tours of campus were very helpful for me.
So speaking of tours, does anyone have any good tips for what you should make sure you do on those tours? Like what questions to ask? Like always check out the cafeteria and eat the food to make sure it's not horrible. Like what kind of tips do you guys have for things that you should do when you go on those campus tours? Anybody?
I think it's important when you go on tours to ask questions about the things that are most important to you. And I think this also rings true for trying to decide where you want to apply to college. So for me, I had like 3 things that were really valuable for me. Was like had places that had a strong financial aid program, places that had a strong dance community, because that's something that I was particularly interested in, and then also a place that would allow me to explore academically. I didn't, for me personally, I didn't want to be tied down to a particular major with like the inability to change majors. Like that was something that was really scary for me. So I basically just had like 3 things that were super important to me, and I was only going to apply to schools that were great in all 3, or like great in at least 2. And those were also the same questions that I asked, you know, different tour guides and things. And I know it's really rough now during COVID because a lot of schools are not doing tours. I dropped in the chat a link to Stanford specifically is doing some virtual visits, and I'm a tour guide, so we like speak on some of the panels there. And I think a lot of schools are trying to do this opportunities because they know that people can't fly out to see them. So I would encourage y'all to look at those, because that's something that we're doing right now, and we don't usually do that. So it's a really cool opportunity. But yeah, so I know it can be overwhelming to like look at all these flyers and like all these schools seem great, like what's even going on, but just to sit down and even like talk with your parents about like what are the most important things for you, and like what do you value as a student, and like what are you going to value in college as part of your experience, and try to look for schools that align with those values. And instead of just like going where your friends are going or going where you just think is popular and good, it's really important that they align with the things that you personally find important.
That's great. And we get like an inside track to a Stanford tour guide. So that's awesome. Good to know. Okay, so moving on then, once you guys had applied to your schools and you had heard back from them and you knew, you know, which schools you had been admitted to, how did you make your decision on which one you wanted to attend? What was the biggest factor in which one you would attend? Luca, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, at least for me, like the 2 biggest factors were like, one, Caltech goes in and they let you not choose your major until after the first year. So like you basically have the first year to do whatever you want, and like it doesn't really hurt you at all because you just have to stay core and do a few electives. And there's also just like I just wanted to go to a small school, and like Caltech is like 250 kids per class. total. So like it's smaller than GHS.
So when you say class, you mean graduating class?
Yes, graduating.
Wow, yeah. Because I know classroom sizes that would be bigger than that at some schools. So, wow, that's amazing. Justin, how about you? Why did you choose A&M?
Basically felt like it was a good engineering school in Texas. I don't know. I didn't really think about it. I was just like, A&M seems good. And was like, all right, that sounds good.
So not a whole lot of process for you then.
Nope, not
No
really.
big spreadsheet that was color coded with all
No.
kinds of information, nothing like that.
I know my
Okay.
mom made me do that, but I really didn't put any work into it. I was just like, A&M looks good, and then decided that.
You got to get in a slam on your mom. I got it. Okay. Anybody else have anything that they want to say about choosing your school, deciding where to attend? Okay, the next question is a little bit related, and that is, what is it about your college that you're currently attending that you do not like, or that you wish you had known prior to coming in? Sam, you're looking very thoughtful. Do you have anything to say?
I'm trying to think of something, but I can't come up with anything. I'm sorry.
Okay, anybody have anything that like kind of caught you off guard or that you wish you would asked about before you got there? I thought that was a good question. Nobody can think of anything. No, I guess you all chose really well then and asked all the right questions. Nobody was surprised by anything. Okay. The next question then is the concept of a student starting out at a community college and spending like their first couple years at a community college or a smaller college before they transfer in to a four-year university. So did any of you guys do that or know anyone that did that or have any opinion on whether that's a good idea or not? Anyone have anything to say to that one?
Yeah, I have some friends at Stanford that transferred in after going to a community college. I think that's a totally awesome option. Like, especially financially, you can save a lot of money. Or if you feel like you're not super ready to go to college yet, like just want to spend another year at home, that's totally valid too. A lot of people do that. It's also relatively common to transfer from just like another like state university and then maybe transfer somewhere else if you want. So yeah, I think it's a totally fine option. It's really just like whatever is the best decision for you. I like don't think there's a problem with trying to transfer in if you're like not ready to go right out of high school. So yeah, I know some people that did it successfully, transferring to Stanford and then transferring to some other schools as well. So every single school takes in transfers, so it's not like people aren't doing it. So yeah, I think it's a great option. Just trying to think about what's the best decision for you. And it's even a decision that you could potentially make after you get into your colleges and you're maybe like, I'm not super excited about any of these schools. Maybe I'll just stay home for a year and do community college. That's also great. So yeah, short answer is yes. I know some people that have done that successfully and have enjoyed their experience or took time off for other reasons, took gap years and things. So everyone has their own journey to college and it doesn't have to be just going straight after high school.
So do you think, Jasmine, that they missed out on anything from an assimilation standpoint? Like I know, at A&M, for example, they have like the freshman camp, and that's where a lot of kids meet their friends, and those people then become their friends for the whole 4 years. So are there things like that that maybe they would miss out on, or not necessarily? Is it pretty easy to get caught back up on that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I feel like in some sense you might miss out on some things that are freshman specific, like the thing you're talking about at A&M. I know my friend goes to A&M. I know they have like a ton of cool traditions for freshmen, and we do a lot of things for freshmen at Stanford as well. But beyond that, at least at Stanford, like we have a really strong community, like the Stanford community at large, and we have so many fun clubs and organizations and things to be involved in that if that's the path that you choose to go on, like there is still so many ways for you to get involved, so many ways for you to make friends. At Stanford, actually, all the transfer students live in the same dorm, so it's kind of like a mini freshman dorm experience because you're all together coming to Stanford for the first time. So I think like, yes, you might miss out on some things, but there are still some fun things that universities do just for transfers to kind of like simulate some of that experience. So it kind of depends on the school, but ultimately I feel like you should choose whatever is the best path for you, like going straight out of high school or maybe taking a break, and knowing that the school that you end up at will hopefully do like some fun things for you to feel like you're a part of the community when you first get there, whether that's as a freshman or as a transfer student.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. The next question I'm going to start with Luca for, and this is regarding getting into really select schools. So basically the question is just what tips do you have if you really want to go to like an Ivy League or a Caltech or Stanford or somewhere that's like a really, really select school? What would be your biggest pointers, Luca, on things people should consider for that?
I mean, it's like you really shouldn't. I don't think you should worry about too much about like GPA, test scores, or anything, because like if you're thinking that you might be able to get in, then you like if you're able to get in, then like you're already gonna have high enough test scores that it doesn't really matter, and you need to think about like what is something different about you, because if you just go and you're like, oh, I have perfect SAT, perfect ACTs, and I just study all the time, you're probably gonna get rejected from most schools. Well, like most of the really selective schools, you need to have something to like interesting outside of like just being a student.
So what was your thing? What did you have?
I just had a lot of like extracurricular academic competitions. I had like UIL academic competitions. I went in and played sports, and then I also just did a few other more obscure math competitions as well.
Great. Okay, good. Jasmine, what would you add to that as far as tips for getting into Stanford and schools like that?
Yeah, so I'm sure that everyone who's interested in these kind of schools has heard this, but it is really important to be like well-rounded, but then also unique in some ways, as Luca was mentioning. So of course, most of these students are going to have like great GPAs, have taken a lot of high-level classes, have great SAT scores. And so it's kind of what you are beyond that that's important. Like that's kind of just a baseline for kind of being able to be considered. So yeah, I think thinking about like what's special about you, I know is hard. Like think about like what's special about you. Like, I'm just a student in high school, but I think just really, I don't know, for me, the application process was very reflective. Like I was thinking about like, how have I become this person that I've been? Who are the people that have influenced me? What kind of things have I participated in? What things am I really passionate about? And I tried to tell that story on my application. Like, I don't know, this is probably cheesy, but I feel like I believe that everybody's really special in some way. And like, I'm sure all the students on this call, you probably have something you're passionate about or things you're really interested in or ways that you want to change the world. And that's the thing that these universities want to hear about. Beyond just like I'm in a bunch of clubs and I do all these things, but it's more like taking a step back and thinking about how are you going to use these things to go forth in the world and like be an awesome person that creates change. So yeah, I would say that's really important. Like truly the essays to me are like the most important part. Having good grades and SATs that I mentioned before is kind of a baseline, and to have great essays, you have to have great content, which means looking like deep inside of yourself and asking yourself like what makes you you and what you're passionate about and what do you love and what are you going to bring to the university.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, because I feel like sometimes the kids focus a lot on just writing skills, making sure that they wrote it well and their grammar is correct and those sorts of things, as opposed to really thinking about the content and what they're saying and, is their passion, like you were mentioning, is that coming through in the essay? So I think those are really good tips.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Luca.
Just talking about the essays, like they act like during the freshman orientation, they actually went in, they read some of the essays which they found the most interesting. So like the essays are actually like something they very much care about and like they'll remember.
Nice.
They won't
Great.
remember like anything.
Yeah, they had
That's
picked
the
out
thing
their
they're gonna remember
favorites.
about your application.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Okay, well, the next question then is regarding scholarships and what tips you guys have for getting scholarships. So, Emily, I know you got a really great scholarship going into Baylor. So what tips do you have for how you manage that?
Yeah, for me, the scholarships actually came from the SAT, ACT scores. So for me, that was pretty much all I had to do was have good SAT, ACT. But I know there's lots of different scholarships that you can get through various things online. You can search but the schools also have random scholarships for everything. You can find scholarships everywhere you look, but yeah, so I think it's different for each school, but for me it was the test scores.
Okay, that's great. And did your class ranking provide any help? Because I know you graduated, what, #2 in your class, right?
Yes,
So
I
was
got
that,
us.
did that help at all?
That did not help through Baylor. I did get a small scholarship from Grapevine High School actually for that, but Baylor didn't provide any scholarships for that. But I think valedictorian, it
Mhm.
depends on if you get like state schools. I know state schools provide more scholarships for class rank, I think.
Got it. Okay. And then Sam, what can you tell us about out-of-state schools? Because I know, sometimes people get a little nervous about that out-of-state tuition. So were you able to get scholarship help with that, or any information you can provide there?
Yeah, my story is kind of similar to Emily's. Like, it was really, I just took the ACT. So it was my ACT score that really gave me some scholarship money. I didn't apply to any outside scholarship funds. So really, I was able to get most of my schooling covered just from a good test score. So I think if you're wanting to go out of state, putting some effort into the ACT or SAT is beneficial for sure. But yeah, I didn't really apply to anything outside of that. So.
Yeah, and you ended up getting most of it covered, so that's fabulous.
Yeah, it was great. Definitely able to afford the out-of-state tuition. So
Yeah.
it was nice.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, anyone else want to add anything as far as tips for applying, choosing which schools to apply to, choosing which schools to attend? Anything else you guys want to add on those topics before we move on? Okay. The next topic then is transitioning to college life. So how was your transition from home to college? Justin, I'll start with you.
I guess it was a lot different just because, I don't know, you have to just like, it's like a whole new world basically that you're not really used to. But at least for me, it wasn't that bad because my roommates were from high school, and then I basically just hung out with people from Grapevine High School until like I met other people through them. So at least for me, it was pretty easy just because of how many people that I already knew were also at my college.
Okay, anything about study skills and how that maybe was different, or attending class, professors? Any comments about that?
Yeah, I definitely had to work a lot harder in college. I guess that would be the only thing, just getting that and like figuring out how to like study and do homework and actually like keep up with my work in college, which
Got
I didn't do as well of in high school.
So a little eye-opening there then.
Yeah.
Okay, how about for the rest of you? This is one of those questions I want each of you to answer. So just to talk a little bit about your experience as you transitioned from home to college. So Luca, go ahead.
Just for studying, like, it's, at least for me, it's less important in college because when we have exams, they're always like open book. So like, there's no really point in studying because like, you just go and you like find in the book in like 2 seconds, then like you have it for you. So like, you really don't have to study assuming that you do the homework because not like you generally know how to do it. And, like, also like oftentimes like, well, at least at Caltech, there's like infrastructure where like you have the house system where it's somewhat like fraternities, but it's not really. Like through that, you just meet like about an eighth of the school. So then you've got like 40 people who like will take care of you when you're a frosh. So like, yeah, it's like really not too bad to acclimatize.
So yeah, so pretty easy to get to know people then, it sounds like. That's good. Excellent. Okay, who next? How about Jasmine?
Yeah, so I went to a school kind of unlike Justin. I didn't know one person going there, so every single person was new, and so I think that made it a little more interesting to transfer, or sorry, not to transfer, to start at a school where you don't know anybody. So I think something that helped me was just joining different communities that kind of aligned with my interests. So I joined like a couple of dance groups. I just like went to a lot of the events that were happening in my freshman dorm, like tried to just get off campus and meet people around, kind of like put myself out there. So yeah, I will say, like, if you're going to a school where you don't know a single person, it is totally possible to make friends. I think some of my best friends that I have now are ones that I met at Stanford, which is really awesome. In terms of studying, I kind of got slapped in the face with the rigor of Stanford classes. I was not really prepared for it. I studied really hard for my test that I had my first quarter, and I failed all of the midterms that I had taken my very first quarter after studying really hard. So it's definitely a transition. I think the main thing that was different for me was in high school, I was used to like not really asking for help from the teachers. Like I would just go to class, I would go home, do my homework, come back, take the test, and like get a good grade. But in college, I had to spend more time like, you know, finding a study group, going to office hours and asking for help from the teaching assistants, going to professor office hours, and just like involving myself more in the community of the class outside of just going to lecture. So of course, this may depend on the college that you go to and the different classes that you take. But for me, I wasn't able to just do things as independently as I was in high school, and had to rely on the community of people around me to be able to succeed in these classes that for me were a lot harder than my ones in high school.
Wow, yeah, really, really good perspective there. Sam, how about for you?
Yeah, my experience was pretty similar to Jasmine's. I went to a school where I didn't know anyone, which I thought was great. Honestly, that was kind of the reason I picked Clemson. It was super far away, so I didn't want to know anybody, but it forced me to get involved in other organizations just so I could meet people. So I really thought the social transition would be super hard. In reality, that part was pretty easy for me just because there's so many opportunities to get involved. If you just start saying yes to things, people are always willing to have you. What was hard for me that I didn't think was going to be that hard was the academic transition. Like Jasmine was saying, I failed my first college exam. So, and I like thought I studied and I thought I was going to do great. And I walked out thinking I did great and I got my grade back and it was terrible. And so really figuring out what study strategies were best for me and being okay with asking for help from my professors was definitely a big part of the transition.
And so was that the strategy that you hit upon, was going to the professors and asking for help? Was that the biggest?
Definitely office hours is really beneficial, or going up after class if you have a quick question. Really just staying on top of the work, not waiting to the last second was helpful for me.
Great, okay. And Emily, how about for you?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the middle. I knew a few people from high school that attended Baylor, but there was definitely not as many as I know a lot of the people went to A&M. So there was a few people that I knew, but just like one or two that I kept in touch with. But there's so many different ways to like get involved. Coming in as a freshman, there's so many different activities that they put together for you, and coming together with all the people in your dorm room. There's so many ways to find close friends, and I really, it's not as hard as you would think it would be to just make a bunch of new friends coming in, not knowing people. Finding the people in your class that you have a lot of classes with is a really good way to make new friends, because you can form study groups together, go to them for questions, and then just hang out at other times. From an academic standpoint, to me, I didn't think it was really harder or easier than high school. Honestly, to me, it was kind of just the same. I just had my own routine. The tests, I mean, for me, it was just about the same as high school. If you just learn the material, you'll do well. But going to professors, that was something I probably didn't do as much in high school as I had to do in college. Just going to their office hours, asking clarification questions. They're really willing to help you. They want you to know the material. They like it when you go and interact with them and like show an interest in the subject. So that is something that I did find beneficial in college from an academic standpoint. That was a little bit of an adjustment, just being willing to reach out when you need help. And so, yeah.
Great. Okay. The next question, Justin, is for you, and it was a question asking about the honors program at A&M. Can you talk a little bit about that, what you know about it, whether you recommend it?
Yeah, so I know, like, I don't know much about like the university's honor program, like overall. I chose that I did not want to do that because you had to live in a dorm, and I did not want to live in a dorm. So that was really my reason not to do that one. I did join the engineering honors program though, because you weren't required to live in a dorm for that one. And I mean, I don't know. It was interesting. You were kind of in different classes. Like you'd have like some classes that were just honors, but there were other classes. Like I think my multivariable calculus class, the class had both normal and honors, and the only difference was God. Sorry. But the only difference between them, they were both in the same class, but like 5 people in the class were honors. So the professor wouldn't teach them anything else. There'd just be other stuff on their test.
So it was like things you were supposed to just learn on your own,
Yeah.
teach yourself.
So that
Got
was
it.
kind of weird. And then ultimately, I think the biggest benefit to honors is just you get to sign up for your classes first.
That's a nice benefit though, because it can be, I mean, that's one thing I learned as a parent of a college kid is being able to get into the classes that you need when you need them is kind of a big deal. So yeah. Did any of the rest of you have that experience? Because I know at A&M that is kind of a big deal, like being able to get the classes you need. Is that an issue at any of the rest of your schools, or was it fine?
I mean, at least at Caltech, the only classes for really like limited seating are like the humanities. And unless you're doing like humanities minor or major in addition to like your technical major, you really don't need to get into a specific one of those classes. So like, I mean, you might have to take like a class you're less interested in, but like it's not going to hinder you at all.
Got it. Okay. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? Signing up for classes?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the university that you go to and the size of the major that you're pursuing. So at Stanford, there's 7,000 undergrads, so I think it's like about 2,000-ish per grade, a little bit less than that. So, and then of course there's like so many different majors. So at Stanford, the class sizes are relatively small. For us, for introductory STEM classes, there is no limit on the number of students that can enter into them. And, you know, that may just be because Stanford is a more like medium-sized school. So yeah, most of our classes are pretty easy to get into. So it really just depends on the size of the university and the size of the major that you're interested in. Because even at Stanford, like when I have to take classes for my major, there have been a couple that I haven't been able to get into because I think my major is like the 3rd or 4th most popular at Stanford. So, you know, because I'm in a more popular major, it's a little bit harder to get into those classes. So it kind of depends, but I think most universities do a good job of making at least the introductory classes really large. So like as a freshman, you don't have to worry as much about trying to get into those classes. But then once you maybe get to the more specialized, like upper division classes, there may be more limited seating and you might have to plan more. But I know at Stanford, if you email the professor or you show up on the first day, like 9 times out of 10, they'll let you in the class because you put that extra effort into like, I know there's limited seating, but I really want to be in this class. And so sometimes that can also help if you aren't able to get into the class, like, you know, on whatever portal you sign up for them.
Got it. Okay. And then related to that, what comments do you guys have as far as advising? So did you know your advisor well? Did you spend a lot of time with them? Did they really help you figure out, you know, what classes you need to take or help you get an internship, or were you pretty independent as far as that goes? Do you guys have any comments about that? Sam or Emily in particular, do you guys have anything to add there?
Yeah, at least for engineering at Baylor, it's pretty well laid out, where they have like a flow chart set up. It shows you exactly what classes you have to take each semester. And then they set up advising appointments with you every semester to make sure you're staying on track. And there's like some flexibility. So if you're a little bit behind or like just need to take classes out of order, they really work with you and make sure you're staying on track and taking the classes that you want to take. And so I think they did a really good job of meeting with us and making sure we were ready to graduate on time. So.
Great. How about you, Sam?
Same for us. We had to meet with our advisor in order to get the PIN number to register for classes. So every semester we were meeting with our advisor. Now, I didn't really meet with her outside of the required time, I meant more with the health professions advisors. So that's more for any health profession, PT, OT, pre-med, dental school. And that was more helpful just to fit those prereqs in. But I think just with the engineering curriculum, it's pretty structured to get you through in 4 years. So, I mean, at least at Clemson, I don't know if it is other schools, but it was definitely helpful enough to get me through.
Yeah, it's good. I was actually surprised at how many kids that graduated with Justin in 2017 graduated from college in 4 years. You know, you always hear about how many kids end up going 5 and 6 years in some cases, but really I would say the large majority of the kids that we knew, regardless of which schools they went to, made it out in 4 years, which I thought was great. So that's good. Okay, before we leave this topic, I want you each to think about the most important tip, if you had to choose just one thing that you would advise to the high schoolers to make the transition to college easier, if you had to pick one. Because I know we've talked about a lot of different things with studying and making friends and just all of that. So if you had to pick your number one tip for transitioning to college, what would it be? Who wants to start? I know I sprung that on you. Go ahead, Luca.
I mean, I think the most important thing you can do is find someone who's like 1 or 2 years older than you, who's in a similar major, and then just ask them for help. Because like it's the students who go through the major like have the best advice. Like the professors who are your advisors, like most of them, their primary concern is research. So like they're not focusing too much on you, but like the older students, like they've gone through the same thing, they can easily give you advice, which is going to be better than what the professors can give you.
Wow, that's a really good tip. I love that one. Who else has one? Yes.
I'd say
Oh,
one thing that
Go ahead.
one thing that was really helpful for me is I like to have things structured and laid out. So just at the beginning of the semesters, like looking at the syllabus and writing down all the due dates for assignments and all the tests. Like it's not like in high school where you get reminders like, oh, we have a test coming up in a week. So I think that's one thing that's really important in college is just knowing what assignments are coming up so that they don't all just pile up on you at the last minute. So that would be my number one tip.
Very good. Jasmine, did you have one?
Yeah, I think my tip is more like to help with your social transition, but I would say that the most helpful thing for me was to keep an open mind. Like going to college is so exciting. There's so many new people there. There's so many fun things to do, fun things to eat, fun clubs to join, and a lot of them that you had maybe not even heard about before. So for me, keeping an open mind about the things that I would enjoy about Stanford and about college in general was really beneficial for me because I got to try things I had never tried before, meet people that I maybe otherwise would have never met. So yeah, I mean, it is kind of scary going to college and potentially not knowing that many people, starting new classes and basically just like starting this whole new life for yourself. So I think keeping an open mind about the people you'll meet and the people that will guide you along the way can help make your experience all that more exciting.
Great. How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I'm going more from the social side too. One of the best pieces of advice that I got when I came in was your first week of classes, your first week on campus, go up to a new person every day in the dining hall and like say hello, introduce yourself so I get to know them. And I didn't really do that at the beginning, but like as it went on, I started doing it, running people in my dorm. I was like, hey, like, hi, I'm Sam, like I'm from Texas, majoring, blah, blah, blah. And when I met one of my best friends that way, just running into her in the hall, and we had a great friendship for 4 years and for beyond. So definitely just be, it's okay to be uncomfortable. Just go up to people. No one's going to be mean. Everyone's in the same situation that you are. So just say hi. You'll never know who you're going to meet.
I love that. Get comfortable being uncomfortable, right? That's good. Okay, Justin, how about you? What's yours?
I guess I just probably agree with Emily on the being organized because my first semester, both me and my roommate were taking the same class and we missed our final. Luckily, he let us retake it, but I mean, that just knowing when things are, knowing when things are due, that's definitely very important because, yeah, it's not like high school where it's just easy to know when things are.
Yeah, because the finals aren't at the same time as the classes, right? They're at a different time. Yeah, You gotta know that. Okay, great. Well, moving on to our last topic then is really just about college life in general. And this is actually a pretty good segue from what we were just talking about, because we were talking about social life, we were talking about academics and making connections and friends. And so the question really is what advice you have for how to balance all of those. Because I think, you know, as parents anyway, we worry sometimes that either your kid's going to get to college and just go, you know, 100% on having a good time and forget to study, or, you know, vice versa, that they're going to get so down in the weeds with their studying that they're going to forget to make friends and have a good time while they're there. So what advice do you guys have as far as just being able to balance those two things?
I mean, I think it comes with being organized too, like knowing your priorities. So if you have a test the next day, you're not going to go out and hang with your friends. Like maybe you've prepared enough and so you can do that. But knowing when to study and when to socialize, I like Google Calendar. That helps me keep organized. I like to see the time blocks so I know how much of my schedule is booked up with class or other activities that I'm involved in. So really just holding yourself accountable, making sure you have a schedule, whether that be through Planner, Google Calendar, checklist, anything like that, just to help you manage both sides.
I think something that helps me, or at least helped me in the beginning during my freshman year, was like not taking as many classes in the beginning because I needed to take into account that it would take me time to adjust to the rigor of these new college classes. I knew that I would want to spend time making new friends and like trying out for different dance groups, you know, like doing other things I knew were important to me besides just like going to school. So for me, that helped when I talked to my academic advisor that I got from Stanford. So maybe you either have an academic advisor or maybe you know some other students that already go to the school or something, so you can kind of help get a gauge of how many classes can you realistically manage, knowing all of the other things that you'll want to participate in. And then while you're actually in the semester, like Samantha was saying, like Google Calendar is awesome. Like I always have like all my things I need to do. I'll put in blocks of when I'm actually going to do my homework, and I'll like schedule time when I'm going to have dinner with friends and things. So trying to keep organized and making sure that you have time to do everything that you want to do. But I think the important thing is just realizing that you're going to want to spend time hanging out with friends and enjoying being at college, and not kind of telling yourself, no, I can totally take all these classes and it'll be fine. But you know, recognizing the different things that you're going to want to do and trying to plan all of that into your schedule so you don't get behind on anything, and then can also enjoy everything that you're doing.
Good. I'm hearing organization come up over and over again as a theme, so that definitely seems important. Does anyone else have anything to add there as far as balancing? Okay. So this question is specifically for those of you that did not get into your first choice college. How has that been for you now that you've got some time past that point and being able to reflect back on that decision? Do you feel like everything has been fine? Do you feel like you've enjoyed your college experience? I know sometimes the kids, you know, put so much stake in getting into that #1 school, and they feel like it's kind of the end of the world if they don't get in. So I think it could be helpful maybe to hear from somebody who didn't get into their #1 and had it all turn out just fine anyway. So does that apply to anybody?
Yeah, that applies to me. So I applied early decision to Northwestern, just north of Chicago. I toured that school. I loved it. I was dead set on going there. I was just applying to other schools to make my parents happy. Like I was going to Northwestern. Obviously, I did not go to Northwestern, so I didn't get in. And it was very devastating. It was a whole ordeal. Then I took some time. I went and toured Clemson. Fell in love with it. I love football, so I don't know why I thought going to Northwestern would have been a good fit for me. But also hate the cold too, so I really don't know what I was thinking. But really, it's okay if you don't get in. I think college, a lot of it is you can set yourself up at a school that has things that you like. So like, for example, I like football. So going to a school that has a good football team was something that was on my checklist. And so you can have certain things like that that'll make the experience easier to enjoy. But I really think no matter where you go, it's on you to get involved in the campus, like try and meet people, talk with your professors. So really that I think you can be happy anywhere, even though you didn't get into your first choice school. I mean, I'm so thankful that I didn't get into Northwestern. Like I wouldn't have traded my time at Clemson for anything. So it's gonna be okay. You're gonna go to college. You're gonna find a place that you love. So not the end of the world. I know it seems like it, but it really could end up for the best. So yeah, I wouldn't give up Clemson for anything. So you'll be fine.
That's such an excellent perspective, Sam, because I know, like you said, you were like, I love football and I hate the cold. So what was I thinking? So I think that's a really good perspective. And we are so glad it worked out great for you. And I know I feel like it almost always does for kids. You know, they end up where they need to be and they all have a good time. So to our audience members here, I just want to give you guys a heads up that we are coming up on our last pre-submitted question, which means we are going to have time to answer questions through the chat. So if you have questions to ask our panelists, you can go ahead and start putting them into the chat. And for our last question, this will be our last pre-submitted question. This will be one that I want each of our panelists to answer. And so this is just talking about living, like the actual lifestyle when you're in college. So, you know, are you in a dorm? How awful was it if you had to be in a dorm? You know, do you have to go to those crazy bathrooms all the way down the hall or not? You know, did you have to eat in the dining hall and was the food really terrible or was it survivable? So we got a couple of questions from people that were just wanting to know more about what's it really like living there? So who has a perspective on that they can kind of start with? And I know, Luca, I think you've been at home at least this last year, right? You've been doing it online?
I've been at home for the last 4 terms. One term is 10 weeks. You know, I mean, basically, don't go to Caltech for the culinary experience. The Caltech Dining Services has the unique skill of being able to have one piece of pasta be both undercooked and overcooked. So if you're looking for good food, don't go to Caltech. But yeah, no, like, I mean, like for dorm living, like it's fine. Like, I mean, if you've been in locker rooms, like the restrooms are like better than that. Like you have a curtain so it's not just one massive open space. And then like, I mean, at least at Caltech, there's like a restroom like within like 20 yards of anywhere in like your residence. So like, that's fine. And then like, I mean, more or less all of the houses smell when you first get in there. So like when you first arrive on campus, they're just like, I'm gonna die. But then like after like two to 3 days, like you don't even notice it. So like it's gonna smell, your parents are gonna hate it, but like don't worry, it's not gonna bother you. And then like, I mean, I feel like living on a dorm is like really nice because like then you just get to meet like random people more or less, and you can just start talking, like random stuff happens.
Very nice. So what I heard from all of that, Luca, was bring air freshener, right? Is that it?
No, don't bring air freshener. Acclimatize to the situation. Everything will be fine.
I'm not sure I'd be able to do that, but that is hilarious. Actually, that's a hilarious perspective. I love it. Justin, how about you? How has your lifestyle living arrangements been?
Yeah, I know. I was pretty lucky. At A&M, like you're not even required to live in dorms your first year just because there's too many people for that. But I lived on campus in an on-campus apartment. So we had a full kitchen and living room, and then we had 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. So that was really nice. And then the last 3 years I've lived in a townhome off campus with 4 bedrooms, 4 baths. So it's been a very good experience, I think, for me with that. Just not having to live in dorms has been really nice.
But you've had to do all your own cooking. How has that been?
It's been all right. You know, you go to the store, you buy your food, and it works out.
All right. Okay. Who else?
I loved living in the dorms. So like I lived in the dorm freshman year on campus, and then I moved into my sorority hall, and so that was dorm style also. But I loved it. It was so social. Like, yes, I was eating from the dining hall, but it wasn't about the food. It was about the people that you were getting to interact with. So it's just so convenient that way. You're close to all your classes. I hate cooking, so having someone prepare my food was not a bad deal for me. I think moving into the apartment, so junior, senior year, I lived in an apartment. It was great. I was still able to be close to campus, but it wasn't as convenient. You were really only seeing your roommates. You had to make that extra effort to hang out with your other friends versus on campus, they were just there. They were like, hey, do you want to go get dinner in the dining hall? So it was just a little different that way. But I would say if you have the opportunity to live in the dorms, I would do it. I think it's just a great way to meet people, especially if you're going somewhere where you don't know anybody. So yeah, I love living in the dorms.
Excellent. That's refreshing. How about
Yeah, I
Jess?
would second that. At Stanford, you actually live on campus all 4 years. Mostly universities are like that, where you live on campus all 4 years, I think. But it was a really fun time. I love living in the dorms. Like Samantha said, it's a very social experience. So it was, everyone's doors were always open. People were always hanging out. We had like a pool table. We always had movie nights together in the dorm. And then our dining hall is actually connected to the dorm that I lived in. So that was really nice. So we could just like eat with whoever was around. So that was great. And yeah, so I'm a junior, but again, I'm still living on campus and it's been a lot of fun. And there's different housing options at Stanford. I'm sure other universities too, even if you want to live on campus that are not a traditional dorm style. So we also have houses that are like Greek houses, but they're not Greek affiliated, where you have like a chef that cooks for you there. So you don't have to eat in the dining hall, but you still have like a shared bathroom and usually you have a roommate and things like that. So it's kind of like a pseudo dorm that we get to live in. But yeah, the dorms are awesome. I don't think the food is that bad at Stanford. I think it's totally fine. I also hate cooking like Samantha. So I like that people are cooking for me. There's also a lot of alternative dining options on Stanford's campus, and I'm sure at other campuses as well. Like we have different restaurants that you can go to that are on campus, and we have a downtown area where people often go to eat on the weekends. And for our meal plan, we have something called Dining Dollars, which a lot of other universities do, which you can use at some locations not in the dining hall. So we have like a late night place. You can get like burgers and fries and milkshakes and things. You can use your dining dollars that are part of your meal plan for that, and a couple of the places on campus. So even if you hate the dining hall food, there's still some other options, but it's really not that bad. And having the shared bathrooms, it's not that bad either. It's something you get used to. Just make sure you have your like flip flops, your like shower shoes to go take a shower. But other than that, it's really not that bad. And the social experience, like Samantha says, like really makes up for any inconveniences that you have to endure.
Shower shoes. That's another note that I'm making. That's good. I like it. Okay, Emily, how about you?
So my freshman year, I lived in the dorms. I lived in a suite it was me and 3 other suite mates, and we shared a bathroom. So I didn't have to go through the shower shoes experience, but we did have to clean our own bathroom. So that when you live in the community bathroom, they clean it for you. So that was one thing that it was a little different, but I don't know, the dorm room, it kind of depends on which dorm you live in. I feel like I lived in the science dorm, so everyone was a little more studious and they're all pre-med, so they mostly stayed in their rooms. But I know a lot of the other dorm rooms were a little more social aspects. So I feel like that kind of differs depending on which dorm you live in. And then after freshman year, I've lived in an apartment off campus. So that's been kind of nice, getting your own bedroom and bathroom. It's a slight drive to campus, but I kind of liked it, and getting to cook and have your own kitchen. So
Great. Sounds like a lot of different options for everybody, which is a good thing. So that's nice. Okay, well, as I said, that was our last pre-submitted question, and I am not seeing any questions that have been added into the chat. Does anyone have anything else that they want to ask our panelists? These guys were so great to make time for us tonight. So this is your chance. If you have any questions you want to ask the college kids, now's your chance. Anything at all? Okay, wow. Well, in that case, I'll go ahead. I did ask each of our panelists to kind of just give some thought to what their overall tips would be, you know, whether it be from any of the categories that we've already talked about or just anything else maybe that we have forgotten to bring up. But, you know, if you can think back to when you guys were in high school and you were, you know, a junior and getting ready to have to apply to college, and just how, you know, again, overwhelming that can be, and all the things that you feel like you have to think about. You know, what tips would you give to them about, you know, what should you be really worried about? I feel like sometimes, you know, people spend a lot of times worrying about things that then they find out later it wasn't really worth your time to worry about that. You know, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't have worried about that thing. I would have worried about something different. So if you have any tips along those lines that, you know, either we haven't talked about or that you just want to kind of underscore for this group, I'd like for you each to kind of just give your final thoughts to everyone. And actually, while you're thinking about that, we did just get a question. So we'll go ahead and ask this one before we get into your final tips. And it was, how many colleges did each of you apply to? Just to give people an idea of how many of those you did. Who wants to start with that?
I applied to 8 colleges. I mean, I feel like it was a bit much. I did more or less, I applied to like 3, and then my parents like, you need to apply to more colleges.
Okay, so 8 for you. Okay.
I applied to 6 schools, but I think it's a little bit different because I did get into Stanford early. So after that, so I applied to like UT and like some other state schools that had earlier deadlines as well. And then Stanford was the private institution that I chose to apply to early. So if I hadn't gotten into Stanford, I would have likely applied to some more schools after that. So I think it depends. Like if you get into some schools early, like if you have automatic admission to UT or A&M, for example, or you get into a private institution early, then you may apply to less. So I think that's also important to note that my number is probably smaller than it would have been if I didn't get into my early schools.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I applied to 4. Like I said, I wanted to go to Northwestern, and I was very stubborn. So I was like, I'm only applying to Northwestern. And my parents were like, no, that's a terrible idea. And in hindsight, they were also right. And I also knew that I just wanted to go as far away as possible from Texas that I could go. And so I just picked schools that were far away. And my parents made me apply to at least one Texas school, but I picked TCU just because it was super expensive. So they wouldn't have wanted me to go there. But I think applying to more schools would have been in my best interest. But then again, I ended up at a great place. So
I like your thought process there, Sam. That's good. Justin, how about you?
I applied to 5. And again, like I think that's just because I knew I really wanted to go to A&M, and I already had automatic admission to A&M, so I just wasn't really worried about how many schools I was applying to.
Okay. All right, Emily?
I believe I had it narrowed down to 4 that I applied to in the end. So I think I only applied to 4 of them. So
That's a good perspective, because I know sometimes I hear the kids talk about, I'm going to have to, apply to 20 schools or 25 schools, but it sounds like, each of you guys kind of kept your number pretty reasonable, which seems to have worked out well for you. Okay, Luca, we did get another question in the chat that is directed to you. What schools were you deciding between for computer science?
So I actually didn't decide on a major until like I didn't know what I was going to do until like maybe February or March of my freshman year. So like I didn't actually like consider the strength of the computer science. I didn't really consider the computer science program when applying. I just considered the general strength of like the overall like engineering departments primarily.
Okay, great. And so which other schools were you looking at?
I mean, it was more or less either Caltech or like one of UT and A&M.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Very good. All right. Well, back then to our final question that we were asking you guys, just in terms of general overall tips or comments that you want to leave our high school students with. We would love to just get your final thoughts. Who wants to start?
I can go. I think my like overall advice, and I know this is really hard to hear, but just to try and accept that you are really going to be happy wherever you end up. Like Samantha, I think, said earlier, like truly you can be happy at any school. And if I didn't go to Stanford, I genuinely think I would have been very happy at some of the other schools that I got into. So like there are so many awesome colleges, and there is not just one that you're going to succeed at. Like there are so many choices, and so many colleges in the US and outside of that even are awesome. So I know it's really hard for someone to tell you to not stress out about it, because I definitely stress a lot, and the process is really stressful. But just to try and tell yourself that it's going to be okay, like no matter where you end up, you're gonna graduate, you're gonna get a job just like everybody else, and you're gonna have a great time. And there's so many awesome people at all these schools, so many cool clubs and things to join. And I don't know, every school has something special about them, and like great things to get involved in. So if you don't get into your number one school, or if you don't even know what your number one school is, like it's all gonna work out, and you're gonna be where we are like 3 or 4 years from now and be like, oh, I don't know why I was stressing, like I had a great college experience.
That's excellent. Yeah. And actually that brings up a good point. I know we have 3 of our panelists that have just graduated from college. So when we get to you guys, if you would share with us what your next step plans are, because I think to Jasmine's point, it kind of all ends up working out in the end, right? So it would be fun to find out what your guys' next steps are as well. Who wants to go next?
I can go. So I'll start off with I was pre-med, so I'm in the process. I'm taking a gap year working as a medical assistant in an orthopedic practice. But I'm in the process of applying to med school. So hopefully next year I will be in med school. But as far as my tip, I'm kind of just gonna agree with Jasmine. Like it's gonna be okay. Like I'm sure, like I remember I was so stressed about trying to find a college, worried about whether or not I was gonna get in, worried about my SATs, my like GPA, my class rank. I was just so stressed about that. But just enjoy the time that you have in high school. Like you'll have plenty of time in college to stress about your GPA, like scrap plans, like you have plenty of time to stress about things throughout your life. So just enjoy the time that you have with your high school friends, and enjoying that experience. And then once you get to college, like there's going to be stressful weeks, no doubt, but you'll get through it. There's plenty of times where I thought I was like, oh, I'm not going to make it, I have to drop out now. And I made it. Everyone makes it. So you will be okay. Just trust the process.
Excellent advice. Who's next?
I mean, I'm just going to talk more about like what you might want to do at college. One thing is like if you're looking to go in and like go into industry after graduating, one thing which you should really consider is like joining some sort of club which does projects related to what you're interested in. Like more or less in all of my interviews so far, like they more or less the only thing I talk about is like my experience with one of my clubs where we more or less built an electric race car for a competition.
Wow, okay, that's great. So you're saying to join clubs while they're in high school in preparation for college, or
no,
also in college?
In college specifically.
In college, okay.
So then you have some experience to talk about. Because like if you just do classes, like you're going to be very limited.
Got it. Okay, yeah, very good advice. That's excellent. Okay, Emily, how about you?
Yeah, I'll start with after what I'm doing after graduation. So I have a job with Raytheon in Dallas, which is an aerospace and defense company. So I'll be a mechanical engineer for them. And as far as the advice, I'd say the best advice would be just like be willing to step out of your comfort zone. And that can go in a lot of different directions, whether it's making new friends throughout all 4 years of college, or just reaching out to professors, going to their office hours, or just going to join organizations or participate in activities that you might not have thought you'd enjoyed before. Just stepping out of your comfort zone would be one of the things I'd say.
That's good. So to the extent they can get some experience or doing that, or some comfort level with that while they're still in high school, that would probably be helpful to them.
Yes, yes.
Excellent. Hey, Justin.
Okay, so I'll start with what I'm doing after college. I have a job with EY in Dallas as a technology consultant, so that's what I'll be doing. And then I guess my tip, again, I really have to agree with Emily there. Stepping out of your comfort zone is very important. I think when I was going into college, I basically planned on living by myself and hanging out with no one. And then I just kind of found myself like living with some people that I already knew, luckily. But then, like, as I talked to more people, I really just started like stepping more and more outside of that comfort zone. And it's been really nice. And I would also say just like finding a balance, like getting a good balance on how you deal with everything is very important as well.
So can you expand on that a little bit? Like how you deal with everything, like social or academic
Yeah.
or both, or what are
Just
you
like the
referring to?
social and academic, and then of course like having some alone time is always good. I just feel like if you're just like all one thing, you're just gonna go crazy.
Got
Or
it.
you're just
Okay.
not gonna do well in school if you're not focused on that at all. So it's
Yeah.
really that balance that's important.
So kind of back to how Jasmine was saying, she uses her Google Calendar and like schedules in like academics and then fits in the clubs and then makes sure to leave time for friends. And so you really have to kind of piece it all together, sort of like a puzzle almost, it sounded like. So
Mhm.
yeah, very good advice. Okay, you guys, well, that brings us to the end of our questions. You guys have been so helpful, and I hope that our high school families that have been on here tonight have learned something. I know I feel like I learn something every time I talk to you guys. It's always so good to find out what college is like these days. Just a couple of quick announcements for our audience members. First of all, as I mentioned, this meeting was recorded, so it should be showing up on the Sage website in the next day or so. If you want to refer back to it or let friends know that we're unable to be here. Also, I will be sending out to each of you that registered for the meeting just a quick survey. They generally are just a couple of questions just to find out what did you like about the meeting? What suggestions do you have for next time around? That just helps me with planning for next year. If you have any suggestions on other program topics that we could do, be sure to let me know that as well. And then finally, for those of you that attended the last one of these sessions that I did, we had a college consultant, Susan Goodkin, that had presented, and she has a workshop coming up that she is offering Sage members a discount for, and then also some money back to Sage as a fundraiser. So when I send out that survey, I will also include a link to her workshop info, just for those of you that are interested. And that workshop topic is going to be exclusively focused on getting into very select schools / Ivy League schools. So that's the topic of that workshop. So be on the lookout for those two things. Thank you guys so much for spending your evening here with us. I know what a busy time of year it is. And to our panelists, you guys, thank you so much. I know as the mom of a recent college grad, I know how either crazy it is in the last few weeks of your college semester, or now that you're done, how much you probably just want to be completely vegging and not having to worry about anything. So I so appreciate you guys being here. You have been fabulous and wonderful. And thank you guys so very much. I hope everyone has a great rest of your evening. Bye-bye.